Canadian citizen on vacation. He was at the Nova Music Festival. When everything started, they made their way to a shelter, but it only protects you from rockets, not terrorists. And long story short, but my son was a hero that day. He stood in the front of the shelter, protected everyone.
He's representing one group of people. He's not representing Canadians because Canadians come from all walks of life. Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, Catholics. And clearly he just wants to represent one group. He's not representing me. Yet people protesting in front of the Holocaust Museum. I'm petrified that they're going to do harm. They're always going for violence. Instead of just speaking, their action is always to be violent.
Do not let anyone come to the country with bad pathological creed or ideas, because they will harm us all. If they do harm, they will do harm to everyone.
Alexa Lavoie here in Amstead, Montreal, where I'm covering a pro-Israel march featuring a special guest from Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. He is a strong advocate for raising awareness about the Abraham Accord and promoting peaceful coexistence between Palestinians and Israelis. Today, as they do every Sunday, participants will walk through the neighborhood calling for the release of the remaining hostages. It's been nearly a year since Hamas launched a terror attack against Israel, resulting in over 1,000 civilian deaths and the abduction of hundreds of hostages by Hamas. In Montreal, we have seen a sharp rise in anti-Semitic sentiment and crimes. Anti-Israel marches occupy the street every weekend, and even the NDP has used the Palestinian flag on their by-election flyers, likely aiming to gain support from the city's large Arabic community and leftist activists. Recently, individuals in Quebec and Toronto were arrested before carrying out planned terrorist attacks. Today, we are here to speak with the people on the ground and hear their thoughts on what is going on here in Montreal and in Canada. Let's check it out. If you believe that people who are here in Canada and are supporting openly terrorist organizations as Hamas, who are not only supporting them, but they are advocating in the street every week, they should be deported, go over deporthamas.com, sign our petition and share it. Make your voice heard now before it's too late. Loay Al Sharif, you are from Abu Dhabi, you are Muslim, and you are here in Montreal. Can you explain why it was important for you to be here today?
I believe Canada is a very important country to voice over, or to amplify the voice of peace between Arabs and Israelis, Muslims and Jews. And I'm here as an honored guest to speak more about the Abraham Accords, about hopes for peace. And I'm so honored to be here. This is my second time in Canada, my first time in Montreal, but I find it very helpful to engage with many audience, Jewish and non-Jewish, in order to amplify the voice of peace.
Right now, what we've seen is the International Red Cross has not been able to support or willing to support in providing the basic needs to my cousin and to all the other hostages that are there. So I just want to make sure that they have a voice. Right now, they're held in tunnels. They don't have a voice. And I find our government in Canada is not supporting them at all. And this is the only thing I feel I can do is by walking every week and attending any other marches. I told my aunt, who is his grandmother, I'm waiting. She goes, when are you coming to Israel? I go, when Omer comes home, I need you to call me and I'll take the next flight. And I'm dreading that she's going to send me a message and that he's like one of the people that were killed. If you remember last week, there were 6 hostages that were assassinated with bullets to their heads. When I hear news like that and I look at the names, I always dread that something like this would be happening to him and to the rest of the hostages.
Majority of Iranian people, they stand with Israel, and we recognize his existence, and it got to exist. The problem with the hostages, we know Hamas is a terrorist regime, a terrorist group, and obviously we can't be surprised of why they're killing, because that's their purpose, to kill. So the main problem is the head of the snake is the Iranian regime and Qatar. Hamas is just a puppet. So if you really want to get rid of these terrorist groups, well, basically we have to go to the head of the snake, which is the Iranian regime.
My son Alexandre Luc was murdered on October 7th. A Canadian citizen on vacation. He was at the Nova Music Festival. When everything started, they made their way to a shelter, but it only protects you from rockets, not terrorists. And long story short, but my son was a hero that day. He stood in the front of the shelter, protected everyone. He's a hero. And people need to realize that, like, this was a civilian Canadian citizen just on vacation who was brutally murdered, and he's not the only one. And the narrative has changed. It's almost like it's been like 70 years. This is not even a year ago. And we need to remind people this was a massacre that happened on October 7th. Brutal massacre. And ever since, the world has turned upside down, and the Jewish community no longer feels safe in Montreal.
We're newcomers to Canada, and we're from Syria. And I think it's super important for us to come and show support to the Jewish community, especially in their time of need, especially when they feel like they're being marginalized, they feel like they're being attacked. We know the kind of people who are doing this, like doing the protests for Palestine. We know we know their rhetoric. We suffered from their violence and their rhetoric for years. In Syria, we have, at least 500,000 people dead, under the same, slogans, under the same banners, under the Palestinian flag.
Why do you support Israel? What motivates your support for the country?
I never changed my support for Palestinians. I still support the Palestinians to live side by side with Israel. I changed maybe my views about Israel 14 years ago when I lived with a Jewish family in France, but I still support the Palestinians. I believe the Palestinians deserve to live in dignity, side by side with the Israelis. I believe in the right of Israel to exist. I believe in the right of Israel to thrive. And I believe that Israel is not foreign colonialists or conqueror. I believe Israel's legitimacy cannot be questioned. And this is the message that I'm trying to convey to people on my social media with knowledge, facts, and the truth in order to accept Israel as a part of the Middle East.
Do you have a message for Jagmeet Singh when we see that his candidate, Craig Sauvé, who is using the Palestinian flag on his election flyer?
What I believe is that Palestinian flag, unfortunately, today is standing for violence, hatred, and uncivilization. Because what I see from this flag, I've only been seeing hatred. So, government of Canada, they should put a stop to this. The democracy and free speech, it's only got to be allowed for a peace purpose, not for the violence.
He's promoting hate, and there's no Canadian values in his poster. So it's sending a message of terrorism.
My skin crawls when I see that. There's boils. It is a direct slap in the face to the Jewish community.
So clearly he's not representing all Canadians. He's representing one group of people. He's not representing Canadians because Canadians come from all walks of life. Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, Catholics. And clearly he just wants to represent one group. He's not representing me.
I think they're using these symbols to galvanize support across the West, not just in Canada. And I think it's a dangerous precedent because as I said, these are hateful symbols ultimately, They're symbols of violence and destruction.
What are your views on those who argue that two-state solution is impossible and who are conveying another kind of message?
To those who are losing hope, I would tell them the only hope for our region is to have both Palestinians and Israelis live side by side. And the most important thing to have right now after the war is to focus on education, and to have a Palestinian leadership that is willing to live side by side with Israel, to recognize Israel's right to exist. Then we can talk about the technicalities of solutions. But if we have political will from both sides, especially from the Palestinians after this war, I believe all other matters can be solved imminently.
Do you have any concern about what is going on in Canada? We have recently a father and son in Toronto that was arrested before committing a terrorist act. We have another one who got arrested in Quebec for plotting a terrorist act in New York. Do you have any concern about what is going on in Canada with like the rise of immigration and what is going on with some criminal that have been arrested?
Unfortunately, the liberals right now, they're out of hands. Same thing as Democrats, that they're out of hands. They're not working for their people, they're working against the people. They're only looking for votes, unfortunately, which having votes and having a third world country, I don't think none of the patriots in Canada, they want that. What we want is the freedom.
I sent my daughter to a Jewish school, and the synagogue that they're attached, they had vandalism. My father goes to a synagogue around the corner from here. There was vandalism there. There's just last year when this was starting, you had people protesting in front of the Holocaust Museum. I'm petrified that they're going to do harm. They're always going for violence. Instead of just speaking, their action is always to be violent. And yes, I have major concerns about that. My daughter had like a false alarm at school, and she came home and she told me, like, Daddy, the biggest concern I had was I was going to be the second member of the family to be held hostage.
So I would advise something to Canadians and to the Canadian government. Do the due diligence before bringing anyone to Canada. By the way, it took me 6 months to get my visa, and I didn't feel offended. I didn't take it personal. I would only ask the Canadians, government and people, to be careful who to bring to Canada, even not for immigration, even for tourism or for working or for just visiting. Do not let anyone come to the country with bad pathological creed or ideas, because they will harm us all. If they do harm, they will do harm to everyone.
If you believe that people who are here in Canada and are supporting openly terrorist organizations as Hamas, who are not only supporting them, but they are advocating in the street every week, they should be deported, go over deporthamas.com, sign our petition and share it. Make your voice heard now before it's too late.